Well, today's thought is entitled, I Needed to Go to the Doctor. And this is a thought that, um, I wish I could share this and make this point without letting people all up in my business. But I actually shared this with some sisters on a prayer call Bible study probably about a month or so ago. And I told them the same thing. Um, I wish I was able to share this revelation that the Lord had given me without letting y'all all up in my business, but I couldn't do it, right? So, anyway, um, for the longest, I have had a major apprehension about going to the doctor, and I wasn't always that way. Um, but over the years, of course, you get older, your body changes, and you have to um, be intentional at every age, honestly, about taking care of your health, right? And um, I would pray to God. I'm like, okay, God, I know that I probably should go to the doctor more than I do for checkups. Wasn't necessarily having any issues for the longest, but I would not go. And I'm not the type of person that really researches to fuel the belief that I already have. But, when you have um, something going on in your spirit that's not beneficial for you, the enemy is going to always make sure that he capitalizes on exposing you to certain things that will continue to fuel that spirit, right? I'm outside, so if you hear cars and birds and whatever, that's what's going on. But anyway, so over the years, there's a reality that healthcare for the black woman in this country is not necessarily the greatest comparatively. And that was one of the things that fueled my apprehensions about going to the doctor. But again, I wasn't always this way. Anyway, I have been praying and praying and asking God to help me with this. And I wasn't ready to call it a fear. I would just use words of distrust for doctors. I would say I have apprehensions, but I didn't call it a fear. And so, back in the month of August, when the Twin City Church, we had our Titus 2 Summit, Sister Pam Hempstead did our first presentation. And if you know Pam, you know health and fitness and physical health and temple care is her ministry, along with other things. But during the course of our friendship, Pam's intentionality about keeping herself healthy and the things that she's done and promoted and taught has been planting seeds in my spirit all along. And I would pray again, still not going to the doctor the way I needed to. I would have to really be sick before I would go to the doctor. And I would pray and ask God, okay, God, I know that I got to do better. The thoughts that I'm having are not beneficial for me, but I don't know how not to have these thoughts, these apprehensions, this distrust that I have for doctors, right? And then, of course, along the way, the enemy is going to make sure that something catches my eye, whether it's a report, a video, somebody's situation, or whatever it was, right? To continue to fuel that apprehension or that distrust of doctors, right? And so, anyway, when Pam did her presentation, I made up in my mind, okay, I'm in a new town. I've been here about 3 years now in Texarkana. And I had a doctor when I was in Dallas, and that was all good. Um, but I still hadn't located a good doctor here yet. Had asked people for recommendations, took down information, try to make sure that they're covered in my insurance network, you know. And so, anyway, I finally got a good contact, and I said, okay, Monday, I am going to call and make me a doctor's appointment. And I text Pam and I asked her to hold me accountable because, a lot could happen between that Sunday and that Monday to deter me from making that doctor's appointment, you know? And so as we chatted back and forth via text message, Pam, I told her, I said, well, I have a distrust for doctors. Um, as a, initially I just said I was intentional because I knew that if I told Pam that I had a distrust for doctors, that she was going to dig a little deeper because that's how we do with each other. We kind of, counsel each other and minister to each other. Uh, I said if I just say hold me accountable for the doctor's office, then she's going to do exactly that. But it was on my heart to give her a little bit more information, so I told her that I had a distrust, and I used it that way. And I think I even used the word phobia. I'm not sure, or fear. And she asked me, "Well, do you know where that fear came from?" And it's really absolutely amazing. It's mind blowing that that one question, I knew the answer immediately, but the answer to that question, me addressing the answer to that question, is what liberated me from the apprehension, the distrust, and the fear of going to the doctor. And so I started, when I answered that question, I realized that when the distrust started, it actually started around 2012. Was it 12? 2008, maybe 2008 or so, whenever my mom was sick. My mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and lung cancer in the same week. And after her diagnosis, she probably lived about 3 months. And in my observation of going uh, to visit in the hospital, being involved, I honestly did not see a genuine care for my mother. And I didn't necessarily see any effort that made me believe that anybody was honestly trying to help her. And so over the years, I chose not to deal with that thought because it would just probably keep me in a very angry state. So I might recognize, but I said, that's all I got to say about that. So I didn't really um, harbor on it, but it was still in me, right? And so after that, that's when I had a distrust for doctors. And then, so of course, along the way, the enemy would make sure that I saw that this woman died in childbirth, and she just so happened to be African American. Then I saw another report, and then statistics are showing that African American women are not treated with quality compared. And so I was just like, man, see, this is why I distrust doctors and all this kind of stuff, right? And so as me and Pam text back and forward, I tried to communicate the magnitude of just how blown my mind was because I was just in tears because I had never really taken time to connect the dots between when the phobia started and the phobia itself, of going to the doctor. So, as I chatted along with Pam, one of the things that she said, she basically spoke a language to me that empowered me. You don't have to stay with a doctor that is not treating you right. You have choices, right? And so I had to move forward and operate in that truth. And it doesn't look like it, but I used to be a basketball player. And so whenever it's game time, I just have this overwhelming energy to come on, let's do this. So after the Lord gave me that revelation and showed me where that fear had been embedded in my spirit, where the trauma, emotional trauma had taken place, which was watching my mother deteriorate and not really feeling like physicians cared enough to do anything that really helped her. I kind of felt like they did things to get her out of the way that would deplete her health quicker. That's the way I processed that thought. And so as I talked with Pam, uh, you know, we chatted back and forth, and she was like, well, your mom's history does not have to be yours. You can make different choices. And as simple as that empowerment is, you'd be surprised how so many of us do not take advantage of just that one um, empowerment. You have a choice. You ask questions. I kind of look at now going to the doctor like I would look um, when I would go on a job interview. I know they're asking me the questions, but there's a part of me that's interviewing them as well, because I got to see if I want to work for this person. So I'm discerning their energy. I'm trying to discern their spirit. I'm trying to see if they're messy or emotional, because I've had some that, even if they offered me that job, I would not go because I had discerned drama, from the interview. And so I have that same type of mindset now when it comes to doctors. I don't have to walk in fear. I don't have to walk in fear. And what grieves me is that there are so many of us that are choosing not to go to doctors, or that because we can't find a black doctor, you know. But as a person of faith, as a Christian, if I'm walking in faith and I'm trusting God, I'm asking God to lead and direct me, because the reality is, the enemy wants me to believe that just because the doctor is white, that they would not be a person of integrity. That is a lie. That is not true. And so I could say, well, I'm going to look for me a black doctor. But the reality is, just because they are black does not mean that they are going to operate in integrity, right? And so my prayer is that I operate in faith, trusting that God will lead me and guide me in my pursuit for a position. And the Lord did bless me with a good one, I feel. And um, that's my prayer, is that God will orchestrate uh, where I should go, the doctor that I link up with. And then not only that, but that I look at it like I'm my first physician, first of all. So I'm doing what I need to do to take care of myself. I truly believe that God won't do in miracle what we have been assigned to do in muscle. So it's kind of like, if I'm asking God, if I have high blood pressure, and I'm asking God to take that away, but I have a diet on a consistent basis that's high in salt and sodium, I'm not doing what I've been assigned to do in muscle for that blessing to be had. Yeah, you need to eliminate or extremely lower the amount of salt that you take, right? And so my mindset is, I'm my first doctor. I have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. I got to do my part. I can't be a poor steward over my health, but then expect God to, I mean, He could expect God to work a miracle. God says, no, I've given you some responsibilities, and there are some things that you just have to do for yourself, and I'll do the rest. And so I have to uh, commit myself to being a good steward of my own body, right? And then when I go into the doctor's office, I'm interviewing him. Not necessarily asking him questions, but I'm paying attention to the questions that he's asking me, because I've done enough research to know what he should be asking me. If I tell you I have this concern, but you don't ask me about this, then I have a problem, right? And so I make up in my mind, okay, I get it. Or you haven't asked me any questions, but you want to write a prescription. Okay, I'm taking mental notes, right? I won't be back to this doctor because he's looking to write prescriptions, but he's not necessarily looking to help me. And so, anyway, my whole point is that, um, as people of God, we cannot operate in fear, because and the thing about it is, we have to call it what it is. I called it apprehension. I called it um, distrust, but the reality, the spiritual core of what was going on in my spirit was absolute fear of going to the doctor, because I felt like if I went to the doctor, my mother's end would be the same as my end. And I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know. But I trust God. I trust God. And at the end of the day, even if I went to a bad doctor or a good doctor, if I needed a healing, it's God that heals, not the doctor, right? And so staying connected to where my true healing and my true uh, uh, being sustained comes from, and trusting God to lead and guide me, being mature in the matter, being proactive, and doing what I'm supposed to do on my own behalf. But as people of God, we cannot operate in fear, because if the spirit that you have for not going to the doctor is not from God, neither is the decision that you're making not to go from God, you know. And so the enemy is very cunning, you know. Um, there's a whole lot of wrong could have gone wrong during this season where I did not go to the doctor. A whole bunch of wrong, but God sustained me. And as I go back and forth to the doctor now, I see major evidence of how He has sustained me. You know, and I'm very thankful for that. And so I'm just encouraging everybody, you know, pay attention to what you're calling apprehension or distrust from a spiritual perspective. It could very well be fear. And if you're making decisions based on your apprehensions when it comes to doctors or your distrust coming from doctors, that might actually be more fueled by the enemy than it is by just life. And so, my prayer for myself is that I always continue to walk in um, uh, faith and empowerment, the wisdom, discernment that God has given me. So I'm not going to go to a doctor and just allow them to write me prescription after prescription, but they're not even advising me. I know a lot of times a doctor will advise, but people still won't do, you know. But you have to at least tell me what I need to do for myself. Advise me. At least I know that you're at least concerned enough to try to get me to help myself, you know. So I'm not going to go to a doctor who is not at least trying to advise me, but that's empowerment because that's my expectation. That's It's okay for you to have expectations of the doctor that you go to, you know, and not just um, continue to avoid, but walk in empowerment, walk in faith, walk in discernment and wisdom, and trust God to lead and guide you. But some of us need to go to the doctor. I needed to go to the doctor, and I am beyond grateful that I did. And the Lord has truly, truly delivered me from a fear, the fear that I had of going to the doctor. And the beautiful thing is, God will, if you really present this fear to God, He will take you on a journey like He did with me and show you where the trauma started. What happened because you didn't have a problem going to the doctor years ago, but now you don't? Is it that I'm just scared of what he might tell me? Because that's sometimes you don't necessarily have trauma, but we get older and we have to do different things to take care of ourselves. But anyway, um, yeah, go to the doctor, pray about it, allow God to lead you, because He put doctors in place for a reason.